Well, good afternoon and welcome to this debate with equal opportunities in sport. I'll be joined by Nick Williamson, who will represent the Equal Opportunity in Sports organization, and Mr. Norbert Simons, who is the Director of Youth and Sport, in just a few minutes. But giving you a background of why we're here, it was a Supreme Court ruling that determined all persons deemed to belong to Bermuda are eligible to represent Bermuda in international sporting events. This ruling came out approximately 2 weeks ago, and it's been, or a week ago, and it has been bouncing around with people having different views, different understandings of how we're at this place. So hopefully at the end of this debate or this conversation, everyone gets an idea of both sides of where we stand and how we collectively move forward from this. Again, I want to introduce Mr. Nick Williamson, and Mr. Norbert Simons will be joining us momentarily. But good evening, Mr. Williamson. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Al. Good evening.
You represent an organization, Equal Opportunity in Sports. Can you give us a little background on this group and what it represents?
Sure, I'll be delighted, and thanks for having me here tonight. We're a group of people who set up an organisation to promote and foster equal opportunities in sport without prejudice and for all. And one of the reasons that we set up the organisation, as we were discussing, was to enable us to put forward the rights of certain belonger children, and which is what we did in the recent court case that we were successful in getting the judgment for. So, we're an organisation looking really to promote sports, and particularly sports among young people across, all of Bermuda.
Well, we're going to have this discussion wherever it leads to, however we go. We were hoping to have other members join the panel. At last minute, we've gotten messages that people are unavailable. It is a bit of a subject where it needs a bit of understanding. It needs a bit of discussion from what I would say both sides of the fence. We have the Equal Opportunity in Sports belongers side. We have a sporting side, obviously, and then hopefully we get from Mr. Simons' point of view the sports policy side. How do we progress past where we've gotten to this far? So hopefully we will have this dialogue open enough to make sure that we can enlighten more people on what is next in the community. But there was a ruling back in 2016, but it didn't particularly was not particularly set out for sport. Am I correct?
That's correct. Yes, it was to do with the rights of belongers in terms of their right of employment and to live and work in Bermuda. I think one of the things that people struggle to understand is the concept of belonger, and I think as you and I were talking earlier, that Bermuda as an overseas territory, and like other overseas territories, doesn't actually have the notion of citizens or nationals.
Right.
Okay, and so the in terms of representation, if we look at the Court of Arbitration for Sports, they've held that it's up to each individual country to determine who's a national for sports representation.
Right.
And so, if we look at it from Bermuda's perspective, we have to go to the Constitution, and the Constitution talks of belongers, and a belonger, as defined in the Constitution of Bermuda, is someone who either has Bermudian status or has received a British Overseas Territory citizenship by naturalisation from the Governor of Bermuda.
Right.
And or wives and children of those two groups of people. So all of those people are deemed to belong to Bermuda.
Right.
And so the decision is that through the Human Rights Act and the Constitution that those people can't be discriminated against when it comes to living and working.
Right.
So really the Constitution says that all belongers need to be held equal
Right.
on that basis. So part of this ruling was to say that as it comes to sports representation, these people who have the naturalisation are deemed to belong to Bermuda and can live and they can work and they can reside here, and so it makes sense that they, from a sporting perspective, can represent as well, because it's part of living and having those rights. So I do know that one of the things that the BOA may want to discuss is that some of the international organisations require citizens or nationals, and because of what I just said, it's difficult to get there because we don't have that notion.
Right.
So really, what as I said, the CAS has said is that each individual country can determine who can represent, who is a citizen or a national, and so belongers form part of that group.
You may mention that they live, they work, and it's for the youngsters. So how I'm trying to word the question. How does the youngster obtain the right holder of someone to represent Bermuda?
Okay, so one of the, as you are probably aware, one of the easiest way to show that you're a national of a country is to acquire a passport.
Yes.
And obviously, in these cases, they won't possess that passport.
Right.
So what one can do and has been done is with a birth certificate of the child, with the naturalisation certificate of the parent,
mm-hmm.
and with a legal opinion or this ruling, they can then write a letter and use that to obtain the necessary approval to represent in that sport. And in fact, there was a recent example of where the UCI, which is the International Board for Cycling,
yes.
Where they accepted a belonger child's birth certificate and their parents' naturalisation certificate and a letter from a lawyer explaining the law, and allowed them to change their nationality to Bermuda. So it's been done, and it can be done, because there are people who don't have a passport, and so we have ways around that, and we one of the things that we as Equal Opportunity Sport are keen to do is to collaborate with the BOA and with Youth and Sports and with all of the stakeholders, so that we can work together and really produce a better result for all of our athletes in Bermuda and the country as a whole.
Okay, so did I hear you correctly say that it has been done from a standpoint of Bermuda already?
Yes.
Cycling.
So in cycling, yes. I understand it was done. Yeah. I do.
Okay. All right. So right now, what you understand with this particular athlete, we're not naming names or anything like that, but for this particular athlete, they can now represent Bermuda at the major festivals. Is that
so certainly that international governing body has recognised that they
person
Bermuda. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so in terms of qualifications and selection and things like that, I don't that's
right.
obviously
right.
And I sort of hesitate to say too much. I mean, there are other people probably who know a bit more about some of these things. But as an example of where I think that working together with the Bermuda Sports Federation and the governing body of each individual sport, whether it be cycling or football or
mm-hmm.
Swimming or whichever sport it is, or rugby, we can work together to obtain the necessary documentation to enable this ruling to be put into effect, and therefore we can, I think it's a real positive for everybody.
Well, I'm listening and I'm getting information as well, so I'm a little more open to conversation, and more questions come, obviously, because when we start talking about in the release, it stated where it's an opportunity to increase numbers, which without a doubt we always talk about our population, our size, our numbers, and so forth. But I think one of the things that is a concern would be what happens to that child's nationality when they feel as if, okay, I want to go back to where my parents are from. How do we operate in that regard?
Well, that is a fair question to ask, and I know that's one of the things that people have some concerns over,
mm-hmm.
about opportunity and how opportunity might not be there. Now, I do have some stats on there being not that many people in this situation.
Right.
But I think that it's one of those issues that you have to that's open for many people, and for all Bermudians, because Bermudians have British citizenship as well, so they have the ability to represent other countries, and in fact many of our, unfortunately, some of our athletes have chosen to do that. I think there's cricket. I think there's one, and which is great. They can go and do that.
Right.
But I think that in many of these sports, these children are excited and want to represent Bermuda, and we really think that we can go places and help put Bermuda on the map, and really I think when you're born here, which pretty much all of these children have been born here, they see themselves as belonging to Bermuda, and so they want to represent Bermuda.
Right. You've
seen, there are some organisations where residency is permitted. Some of the lower festivals, and you've seen what it means to these kids. You've been out there and watched them. So I don't really have that concern, because I don't think it's specific to this group, because as I said, all Bermudians have that opportunity.
Right. Well, I do want to welcome the Director of Youth and Sport, Mr. Norbert Simons. Mr. Simons, we've started talking about the Equal Opportunity in Sports group and the ruling that was made, I would say a week and a half ago, thereabouts. We've gotten on to the reason why we're here. From a policy standpoint from the government, Youth and Sport, can you just, I guess, lay out what the policy is at this time regarding representing Bermuda?
Well, we basically acquiesce to what the international standards are. I think that we don't normally get involved with national sports governing bodies and who they determine should represent Bermuda.
As far as when you guys have your what is it called? Your symposium.
Yeah.
And you're going over rules and regulations for Bermuda and so forth. I understand that internationally we follow each governing body of the international sporting event or sporting body. But locally, how do we make sure that people are following all guidelines regarding staying within the measures of government rules and regulations?
No, to me that's more of an immigration question, and I'm not in a position to even tackle the immigration aspects of it all.
Right.
But from a sporting point of view, our view is that, like I said, when we provide assistance to national sports governing bodies, it's for the development of sport and all those involved in sport. Now, again, I do understand that each international federation has a different set of guidelines. I do recognize that, and acknowledge that the IOC for the Olympics clearly states that those that can represent a nation should have they need to bear a passport and be a citizen or have status or a national of their country. So, but the best person to really answer those questions will be the NSGBs and their international federations, because like you said, I know that the Commonwealth Games has a different criteria than what the IOC has.
Right. What we're trying to ensure is that everybody gets an understanding of where we're at. And I know you've had a look-see at the ruling. I don't know how much you've dived into it. We've gotten press releases as far as what the ruling was for. Basically, this debate is more for people to understand what's next. Where are we? How did we get here? Obviously, we have, and you've already alluded to it, we have this immigration issue where people from other countries are here working and they have kids who come up through our programs in sport and then get to a certain point where it's a nationality issue. They're not got a Bermuda passport, and I think this is where the court ruling if I'm not mistaken, comes into effect of certain elements of this ruling. But Nick, you alluded to several things about the ruling and how we move into getting the kids who at some point represented Bermuda, wore Bermuda shirt, wore Bermuda jersey, up until a certain age, and the numbers in which it increases the ability to have, because we always talk about numbers and the amount of people that we can, a pool we could pull from. But take us through what we can learn from what has been experienced thus far, and then how we can actually move to the next step.
So I think just for Norbert, I think if we just maybe just repeat what we were talking about.
Yeah, that's why.
About the
right.
I understand the IOC requiring citizenship or nationality, and as we were talking, that Bermuda as an overseas territory doesn't actually have that notion of citizen or national, and so therefore that's why we go to the Constitution and look at the term the terms people who belong to Bermuda as either those that have Bermudian status or are naturalised by the governor, which is where we are, or their wives and children. So those are the two pieces. So the obviously a passport would be a good piece of evidence that shows that you are a belonger of Bermuda, because that gives you the Bermudian status. Or the alternative, as Earl and I were talking, is that some we've already experienced that some international sporting bodies accept a birth certificate and a naturalisation certificate, and essentially this legal ruling. And the Court of Arbitration of Sports has determined that it's up to each individual country to determine who is eligible to represent their country. So I think that working together, we can find a way forward that allows us to utilise the talent and access to talent for Bermuda. And as we were talking about, these children who are born here, absolutely, they want to represent Bermuda. They really do. So, I think we can work together and find a way. And what I see, how do I see things moving forward? I think in short order, there'll be conversations with the BOA and with youth and sports, so we can work together and say, how do we make sure that this happens and that we fairly move forward. And as you said, the other thing,
So see, I'm understanding all that, but like again, I said at the end of the day, whatever our role as a department is to assist the development of sport.
Right.
Now, the belongers issue. Now, I don't even know how to address that from our department's point of view, because we provide grants for the development of sport.
Right.
Now, this to me sounds like an issue. Still is an issue that immigration has to answer that question.
Yes.
Okay, because I think that I've seen some documents come across my desk where the IOC and all have indicated that they have to have a passport. Now, it belongs to have a Bermuda passport, and I think that would resolve the issue again. But we don't, as a department, cannot issue a passport.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? So you understand what I'm saying too. So I'm a little reticent to even be in this discussion. You see,
well, I really want you in the conversation to make sure that policy is understood. From a standpoint.
But I'm just going to tell you our policy. We don't deal with policies to deal with who's a Bermudian,
right,
who can represent Bermuda. You understand what I'm saying to you, right? So that's pretty much outside of our purview and remit. You see, now if you want to talk to me about funding and grant applications and stuff, because at the end of the day, when we give monies to national sports government, but it's for the development of sport. Now, if they deem that fund should be used to develop their PRC holders or locals, no, I mean, I'm not there now. No, again, that's another debate to have, and that debate is above my pay grade.
Okay.
To be quite frank,
right?
I mean, because I don't want to misspeak. Because a lot of times when you say you're representing government, then what you say now becomes policy and the law of the government.
Yeah.
But I can't speak on behalf of the minister.
Yeah.
My job is to say, well, Minister, this is what the IOC says. This is what the
FIFA say.
I'm talking about the UN.
CG,
UN has stated. Now,
yes.
This for internal matters. Now, I'm not too sure. Obviously, I'm not a lawyer. I read the document, and I've had some feedback from other quarters that I'm not prepared to speak to because because they can speak for themselves.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if I'm asked, like I said, if you ask me a question about belongers, I can't answer that question because at the end of the day, as is stated, because we are not a sovereign nation.
Mm-hmm.
There are some questions, but I know that the Commonwealth organization changed the rules around a little bit because I think that at one point they did it that anyone could have left England or Australia or
Yes.
New Zealand went to one of the smaller territories and
Right.
say they want to represent
That
their country
Right.
at the Commonwealth Games.
Right.
Now I know the Commonwealth Games took that ruling, said from 2 years, I believe it was, up to 8. Now
Right.
they brought it back down to 5.
Right.
And the rationale behind that was they wanted to ensure that the indigenous people in each community gets the opportunity to shine.
Right.
So now, that's the Commonwealth Games. Now the ISU has another set of ruling altogether.
Yes.
Now, again, the question now is, irrespective of what this ruling is that is the IOC and IAAF, is the FINA and the rest of these bodies going to accept this ruling? I don't know. I mean,
Right.
that's a question that's, I've seen some documents coming back to say that this is our policy and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where do we go from here? That's the
Right.
question.
Right.
I mean, they're all good points. I believe that that the international organisations are keen on allowing each country to decide who can represent. And I think that you raised some good points about essentially sort of nation swapping and shopping that has gone on in many sports.
Right.
I don't think that's what we're dealing with here when we're talking about people that have been born here, lived here their whole life, and have naturalised as BOT citizens, and essentially, you take the oath that says you're going to make your home here, and that's what we have done. So I hear all those things, but I think that those, as I said, I think those international sporting organisations will look favourably, and I think we can work together to move forward.
Okay.
I think one of the things that maybe we could, I just mentioned that it's actually a relatively small group of people that we're looking at here. I mean, if you look at the 2016 census, there were I think 3,390 Bermudian children aged between 12 and 18, and there are 443 non-Bermudian children aged between 12 and 18. Now, most probably of those aren't in this position, aren't in this, and won't be able to naturalise and become belongers. So we're talking, a relatively small number of people, so maybe a 20th of those children that are Bermudian that are here. So it's actually quite a small number of people, I think.
I do want to invite those who are watching to, if you have a comment or a question regarding the ruling and what possibly we can debate a little bit here, you could give us a call at 599-0487 or send me an email. I can ask the question. It's earl@islandstats.com. We welcome questions. If you can, keep your comments over the phone brief, and we can get to answering them as quickly and as hopefully as well as you want the answer to be given. So we do invite people to give us a call, 599-0487, or email earl@islandstats.com. So back to you, Mr. Williamson. What has been the talk between the belongers and the association in which you're trying to get the people to represent? Have you had any conversation of late? What has been going on there?
I mean, in terms of the obviously there were some elements that were confidential in terms of the specific rulings, so
right.
It's probably not best to talk specifically about that.
Right.
But in terms of, I think as in terms of moving forward for some of the people represented and some of those people in the situation, as I mentioned, we some people have reached out to us. Some people who are on various committees that are part of some of the organisations that are here in Bermuda, the VOA and others, and they're keen to learn more and see if they can understand what it means for different sports and different areas, and how it can help them maybe field teams where maybe they've been struggling. In some of the, obviously a lot of this gets focused on individual sports, but where maybe there's more competition. But so much of this, we don't have a deep pool for many team sports.
Mm-hmm.
So rugby, for example, I think that they see this as something that has real potential to allow them to field teams next year and in the following year at Olympics if they can get there. And just from I've been involved in the girls' football recently. It's one of the most amazing things that I've been involved in, and that through collaboration with the BFA and other interested parties, they've developed a whole new girls program. But there aren't that many involved, and you see a lot of the girls having to age up, and we've put out teams who've done it very, very well. But it'd be great if we could put out teams in each age groups, and they could play under 13, under 15, etc. So I think that to the extent that we can help, I mean that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to help and advocate for the athletes.
Right. Following the ruling, what is the group's expectation as of today?
Well, we hope it opens dialogue. We hope that we can work together and find a way forward that allows us all to be on the same page. And we hope that we can educate everybody, because I think these are complicated, complex matters that are unique to the island. And we, as I said, there are many people who know more, who understand the law more, and I think I've tried to summarise some of what has happened. But we really hope that this just opens up discussion. I think it's a positive thing. I think that in every way, sport and development of our youth is just key to encouraging a successful community.
Got an email just asks. What impact will there be on the long-term funding and development of athletes if the Belonger athletes receive support but ultimately never become Bermuda nationals with full rights? Will these athletes be able to represent the country at the Olympics, for example? If not, then how should funding be distributed? I think, Mr. Simons, you answered that just a little while ago by saying funding is given based on the NSGB and development of the sport, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of answers that question as far as funding, with going towards the sport itself and not individuals, I would imagine. So,
Mm-hmm.
So we get these type of questions, and I hopefully we've answered that. That was answered before. I guess that person was typing before.
Yeah. Again, because we provide funding for the development of sport. We don't, not the individual. No, I shouldn't say the individual, because we do offer elite athlete funding.
Yes.
And that's managed by the BOA.
Okay.
For elite athletes.
Okay. Have another one here that we started a ball rolling.
Mm-hmm.
Representing your country should be viewed as a great honor and privilege, and I am very concerned that this will be diluted as a result of this ruling. Any response to that?
I mean, I obviously disagree. I think that you have to look at it on two parts. The first is that the ruling is really affirming what was already in law, through previous rulings and through the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
So it's giving the rights that these people already could have been deemed to have had, and just confirming that. I don't think it dilutes it at all. I think it's going to make it better. I think that a deeper pool. We're so small. We don't have the ability to send athletes in all sports, in all events. I think I was reading something that Don Burgess had written, saying that it's very rare that we have people who can't represent because of multiple qualifications. It doesn't happen very often. I think he's written over 400 sporting articles on individuals in sport in Bermuda. So I think that what tends to happen, and we've seen this in many of the sports, is that when you increase the standards and you increase the competition, the surprising thing is that people reach those standards. They push themselves and they get better. And I think that this is as I talked before, there's only a small number of people that are actually affected here, but I think it's going to improve sport for Bermuda as a whole.
I understand the ruling, but it concerns me that anyone can come to the island and compete internationally for the country without having full Bermuda rights, i.e. vote and represent the country in government. Is the real issue here that Bermuda is not really self-governing, and the only way to resolve the issue of what is a Bermudian is self-determination? Otherwise, we have to accept the ruling and live with the implications, correct?
Well, I think just that my quick response to that would be that people can't just come to Bermuda and represent as that doesn't exist. It doesn't happen, and that to be able to naturalise as a BOT citizen and to be deemed as a belonger, you have to have the right to remain in Bermuda without restriction, and so that's generally come about through the PRC process.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about people that have been here for at least 10 years. And in most cases, then their children who were born here, most of those children were born here. And in fact, it was only, these things only come up recently because it was until 2008 there was a pathway for children born in Bermuda to acquire Bermudian status.
Mm-hmm.
It's only since 2008 that has changed. So it is a relatively recent thing, but I think that I sort of hear these comments, and I think that it's just we need to make sure that everyone understands that people you can't just show up and acquire this status and be able to represent. That isn't true at all.
Without giving too much away, because there's a lot of stuff that did not come out. What is deemed to belong? Well, how long do you have to be in the country to be deemed belong?
So if you look at the so if you go back to the Constitution, so a belonger is either a person with Bermudian status or a person who is naturalised as a BOT citizen and being granted that certificate by the governor, or their wives and children. So, and you can only
hold on, caller. Hold on. Go ahead. Finish.
And you can only apply for that if you are able to live in Bermuda without restrictions, and that's through the PRC. So I think the PRC is generally 10 years. Now there are other ways from a legal perspective. I don't know, but I'm talking specifically about some of the people that I know represent.
Okay, caller, can you turn down the live, and then you can have your question?
Okay, hold on. Don't look at me. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
You have a question?
Yes. Is it live?
Yes, it is. Go ahead.
Okay. Hold on. There's a time lag, I think, with.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be. But go ahead.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank the panel for attending tonight, and I'd especially like to thank Equality in Sports for going forward with their court action to ensure the rights of non-Bermudian but nationals and belongers of Bermuda, basically, for bringing this matter to the fore. It follows in the footsteps of other court actions in the last 2 years, whereby being deemed belongers can own property in Bermuda, the same as a Bermudian. They can own shares in a company of whatever percentage they want. They're not limited to the 60-40. So this is just another step forward in ensuring the rights of belongers who are basically, they belong to Bermuda the same as a Bermudian, and they're to be treated the same, that they are actually treated fairly and within the law. And the court ruling was very, very important for that. There was a question raised about passports. Now, I have 2 children. I am Bermudian and my wife's Bermudian. My children are deemed Bermudian. That was an issue that was dealt with by the sporting bodies in the last few years. And the simple solution was they came up with a stamp for the passport, and it says in my children's passport that they are deemed Bermudian. So they have all the rights of Bermudian. So therefore they could represent the Bermuda in international competition, the Olympics, etc. That issue was dealt with and dealt with very well. So I don't see any major impediment to this. The simple solution would be a stamp in the passport. There's already a case where someone has gone forward actually and presented paperwork to a sports governing body overseas, and they accepted it, they understood it, and that was before the court ruling. Now you have the court ruling to back that up. It is the law, and if anyone in Bermuda doesn't comply, sporting body refuses entry to an athlete, what basically will happen is that they will probably end up in court because they're discriminating against somebody who belongs to Bermuda. And someone who belongs to Bermuda is a Bermudian, a BDOTC citizen, which is what Bermudians are because they are British nationals, and they fall into one of the 7 or 8 categories of British nationality. So really, everyone just needs to work together because this boosts our athlete pool. It's all good for Bermuda.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank
Tanya.
you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Well,
Well, Earl, we had a situation the other day, even with the new British Bermuda passports, because it has GBR in it. They were denied to represent Bermuda at CONCACAF football.
oh, right.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So now
yeah.
that's a recent story. I mean, that's come across our desk. So, the waters are getting muddy now. I think that someone's going to make a decision one way or the other.
Right.
Because even with like I said, with the new pass, even though CONCACAF, FIFA, BOA saying that you have to, not IOC is saying that you have to have a Bermuda passport, but the new passport that's got GBR and not BMU,
Right. Creates a problem.
those are whether you're deemed to be Bermuda or born Bermudian,
Right.
you're going to have a challenge under the new ruling in these passports.
Right.
And if the international federations are not going to accept it, then where are we?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree that somebody's got to make a decision.
Yeah, that decision's got to be made. It's not at my desk.
Right. Right.
And I'm not
you
even
made
in.
it. You made it clear earlier that obviously it's above your
Above
pay
my pay grade. It's way
Um,
above my pay grade.
But I have to agree. Somebody has to make a decision.
Yeah.
We have to figure out. We're at this road. Do we go left? Do we go right?
Well, you be like Trump, put up a wall.
No, but who's going to pay for it?
Well,
Obviously, the comments just now would have delighted you, Mr. Williamson. That the what you guys are fighting for, you've seen people already go through the process and get their what one would deem reward. You're hoping that more of the people who feel as if their rights are not being sought in all the terms that they're looking for continue to push forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think the caller summed things up probably better than I have done. So I appreciate that, and he obviously explained some of those concepts in the way that I think is the correct way. So
Right.
that was good. But we're just looking, I think, to help educate everybody because it is a complicated situation. There are lots of terms and things that people haven't come across before, and so really, how do we make sure that our sporting bodies understand who has different status, who is in different areas, and what they are able to do to represent Bermuda. So, and I think that many of those organisations, as I said, one of them come to us and said, we didn't know about this, we didn't understand it, we need more people, we just don't have enough for a team. So this is great, so there are, really, I think that's just an open discussion and a collaboration, and we'll all work together, and I think that we can move things forward.
I saw Mr. Simons nodding his head.
no, I'm gonna get in trouble because this is going to be a very emotive topic, and I say emotive because there's a segment of the community who feels that they're not valued in this country. Okay, and we have to be frank about it and honest about it.
Right.
And we have to have open and honest discussions about it. Where, irrespective of what they do, they can't find work in their own country.
Right.
Those that are born here.
Right.
And now you're going to throw on top of them that someone who was come here is going to have the same rights as them or even better.
Right.
To represent the country. So we have to have this. It's just going to have to. We cannot avoid or sugarcoat.
Right.
Or dress it up any other way, but we have to have that open and honest and frank discussion. And you're right, there's going to have to be education processes going along as well. Because right now, I think that the pushback is going to be is that I can't get a job in my own country, so now you're going to tell me somebody else is going to come here and represent my country in sport, and I can't get the chance to go. So I think, and you heard me allude to Donald Trump earlier,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Because clearly that's what America's going through right now too.
Right.
All right, about who has rights and who and the like. So it's become a worldwide problem. I mean, the borders have been open. And so we have a migratory society in our world now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so little small Bermuda is now going to have to be caught up in this. And so we have not sat down and talked to Bermudians or Bermuda about where they really fit in the world picture.
Mm-hmm.
And so now all of this is going to have to be discussed. And I think that we have not had frank discussions about topics like this.
No. Too many people try to hide.
Yeah, we sugarcoat things and say, oh, well, let me play the emotional cards here about, oh, Bermudians are being left behind and Bermudians are being left out, or whatever the case may be. So really, times that be, the powers that be, all of us, not just, I don't care where you sit on the fence or where on the wall you sit, this discussion has got to be here because there's a deeper issue than just about the belongers and the right. I mean, the belongers will say that because they were born here, they have a right to be here. You hear the same topic, same subject in the United States where children of Mexicans or whatever the case say that they were born there and
they have the right to be there.
And Americans say, no, we don't want you.
Right.
So, we're going to have to deal with that. At some point in time, that is going to have to be clearly sat down and thought about. Which also leads to the fact that, what are your, because, we don't want to talk about Bermuda was really set up as a company in 1609. Are we really a territory or what? Are we a company or are we a nation? So, at some point in time, we're going to have to sit down and have that conversation.
I think what you're alluding to, and I want to ask Mr. Williamson, the 2006, the 2016, debate or court case was mainly about the rights of having to be able to work and equal rights. Was that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know we were talking earlier that you weren't too familiar with all of that, but now that it looks as if now we're tacking a sport onto that or sports onto that. Is it the same argument? Is it the same fight? Because the 2016 one, it says, can own shares in a local company without being subjected to the 60/40 rule and acquire and hold land in Bermuda without restrictions on the same basis as Bermudians. It doesn't say back in 2016 that you're fighting for the rights of sports.
Yeah, so to be clear, that wasn't equal opportunity in sport. That was a very different party involved.
So the equal opportunity in sports, I wouldn't say piggyback, but used that as an argument to...
It's a similar argument using the Bermuda Constitution and the Human Rights Act, which said, again, better if there was a lawyer just to make sure I didn't say the right things. But it's that having Bermudian status and being a naturalised BOTC citizen are deemed the same thing, that you're deemed to belong to Bermuda, and the Human Rights Act says that those people cannot be discriminated against.
Okay.
Therefore, they have the same rights to live and work.
Okay,
so
you would know this a little better than I would. When a child is born in Bermuda to a say someone doesn't have status as of yet and they're born in Bermuda, what paperwork are they given? How are they able to? What documentation do they travel on? I'm only asking because I'm trying to figure out when would this group be looking to get a person to become a Bermudian? When does the paperwork for a sport purpose? Because the only way to compete internationally.
I think, as we talked before, I think that those national boards, the international boards, are going to recognise that the in this example, a birth certificate, a naturalisation certificate, and this ruling. Right. They're going to, and because that ruling explains, therefore, that person is deemed a belonger of Bermuda, and that this.
Right. So my question again is a person born in Bermuda that have parents that work in Bermuda but are not status Bermudian, are they given a Bermudian passport, or what passport do they get? No, they don't. No, they get a British passport. They get okay. Well, sorry. Whatever nationality the parents are.
Yeah, if you're asking my specific case.
Right.
Yeah. So and it's only through the acquisition of the ability to live in Bermuda without restrictions, that you can then you acquire and apply for naturalisation.
Right.
So there is no, there's no automatic anything there. I think
right. I think that's what I'm alluding to, because what I'm trying to find out is,
do they get a Bermuda passport when they're born?
When they're born. So, or when do they get a Bermudian passport? When the parents become.
So I guess if you're talking about this specific,
I'm talking
specific group, then we're talking about
sport. Yeah.
That when the parent has naturalised, that again, looking at the Constitution, and this applies to those with Bermudian status too, the wives and children under the age of 18 are deemed to have that same status.
Okay.
Whether it's Bermudian status or whether it's BOTC status through naturalisation.
Okay.
So there's four parts: A, B, C, and D.
Okay.
A is Bermudian status, B is the BOTC status, C the wives, and then D is the children.
Okay.
And
but for clarification, do these same children at what age do they apply for status
Right.
That was going to be my next question. When do they? Yeah.
So that's
at 18. Is it not deemed to be Bermudian?
So at 18. So then the child on turning 18 could then get through the same process to naturalise.
Okay. All right. So
we're talking about people that have been here and have that right to live here.
Right.
And then
Right.
Right.
So then the fear, I think that the fear for some organizations is that they invest money in this child, and then when they go 18, they decide they're going to go represent their country of origin. Which may be
that's been some of the banter I've heard.
Yeah.
Well, and as Ellen and I talked earlier, every Bermudian has the British citizenship as well, so they have the right to go and represent Britain or.
But actually, we don't. We have to apply for a British passport.
Yeah.
And you can apply for that. But and there have been cases where Bermudians who have gone overseas to represent other countries.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's part and parcel, I think, of people who have multiple nationalities that they can do that. But and every case is individual, so I don't know what the right answer is. But certainly, as I said before, many of the children that are represented here were born here and feel that they are in every way belong to Bermuda, and that they want to represent Bermuda. That's all I can say.
I can say this, that as a result of what happened in Montserrat, in order for because they lost 60% of the island apparently. I could be corrected on this. That's when the opportunity to get a British passport came open to the territories. Because before then, if I went to England, even though I'm a British overseas territory, whatever you want to call me,
right,
I couldn't go into the British line. I had to go into the other line.
Yeah.
But once you got your British passport, you were able to go in and out of Britain.
Right.
And that luxury only came as a result of what happened to Montserrat. So England may decide after Brexit that order's going to stop. I don't know. We don't know where we stand as far as because, as far as I'm concerned, again, I'm stepping out of my lane when it comes to the overseas territory matter. Again, that's got to be clarified too. But that's got to be clarified at a level that is beyond me. I can have my opinion on it, but So what happens after Brexit? At the end of the day, because that question is going to have to be a fair and clear question, because we got an EU passport.
Right.
After Brexit, what happens?
They're having debates about that now. So when we look at, you were talking about numbers. When you're saying 20% of that 490 something.
I was saying that
there are about
2016 census, 3,500 Bermudian children aged 12 to 18, 400 non-Bermudian children aged 12 to 18, and that only a fraction of those would be in this. I don't actually know the numbers, but it would be maybe 100, 150. I don't know. So we're talking about a 20th.
Right.
Of the, we're talking about a rather small, and many of those are not sports people, men and women. They do other things.
I think, and Mr. Simon said it earlier, we need to educate, because there has to be some dialogue on how we move forward. Only because that 20% in 4 years can become 80%. If we, you know what I mean? Well, we don't know. There's holes we can get through. We can, you know. I'm just saying that. But if we educate, everybody will be on the same page as far as understanding how one can become a national, how one could become deemed Bermudian, and represent the country if allowed to at the international level. Because I think it all comes down to the major sporting governing bodies, and Mr. Simons was talking about CONCACAF, who did not recognize a GBR, but a Bermuda passport, but had GBR on it. And they're again, I go to events and I'm saying that this person's not an immigration officer, so how could they tell me whether or not, you know, I'm legal or not? But they have people there that look at it and say, well, this is not what we're used to seeing. We saw this, and this is different, so no. So what's next for your group?
I think just as we talked about it, I think it's just trying to work with all of the interested parties to try and promote and move forward and work together, really. So I think that, as I said, there will be discussions in the new year with some of the sports federations who are looking to see how this can help them, and there are others that are looking to say, what does this mean for us? And as much as we can, lean on people, the informed people, and those that have the knowledge and the professional side of it, that can say these are the facts, and how are we going to solve the problems that might be thrown up, and how can we work together to make sure that everyone is represented, without discrimination.
Well, gentlemen, I do want to thank you for your time. I think some people have been enlightened, educated. I know there's going to be more discussion, more debate on this topic and plenty others, but I'm glad the fact that sport once again is proving that it can offer debate, and we can sit around a table and discuss and lay cards on the table as to how we feel about situations. I think that listening to you, Mr. Williamson, obviously Norbert has to be very careful on how he
no, because I'm really hoping that as the discussion progresses, that that the emotion is taken out and we can be as dispassionate as possible.
Yeah.
Because it can be. I think it will be a heated discussion, heated debate, and I think that we have to that when we do sit around the table, that we check our egos at the door, and put aside personal agendas, and try to keep emotions intact and deal with facts, because at the end of the day, you're dealing with people's lives.
Yeah.
I'm not irrespective of what side of the table you sit on. Remember, there are people that are involved, and so we have to be. I want us to be cognizant of that fact when we have the discussions held, because I know, like I said, it's above my pay grade, and I'm prepared to stay in my lane. But I do have an opinion, but we leave that alone.
I honestly feel that we need to have this dialogue, open dialogue. I mean, we need to have more people involved to get a better understanding of everybody involved. And again, it needs to start at the top. It needs to. We need to figure out what message we're getting from,
and what's a clear definition of what a Bermudian is.
Yeah. Well, that comes through government.
If it does exist at all.
Well, we have our opinions and so forth. But I honestly feel that government need to quickly get on board, come to some resolution on, so that all parties can move forward. And until that happens, I think we're standing still. I know the caller did indicate that any sporting body that fails to recognize a person would be breaking the law, could end up in court. So hopefully we can get government to move forward and either recognize or not recognize, and then everybody would know which way we're heading. But I do want to thank you both, gentlemen. Appreciate your time. I think again, the viewers have been informed somewhat, probably confused by me somewhat. But I do want to thank you both for your time, and I want to say Merry Christmas to both of you, to you and your families, and hopefully or you get everything you're looking for under the tree.
Let me visit me.
And we look forward to a very interesting and opportunity driven 2019, and because it's a big year for sports for Bermuda, in Bermuda. So I do want to say thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson.
Okay.
I apologize for being late,
Thanks, Al.
No problem.
but I had
Great to see
joined
you.
you. Good. Finished?